All right, so I just blew your mind with some nested functions in some scenarios that are very, very similar types of tables, just so I didn't throw bunches and bunches of different things at you, looking at different types of data. They're all very similar, okay? Again, I will never have you do this on a test. I want you to understand the idea. I want you to know what a nested function is. It's when you've got functions inside of a function in order to create your final formula. All right. So the next thing that we had on our list is drop-down lists. So drop-down lists allow you to quickly select from a list of accepted entries, and it will prevent you from adding things to the file that aren't approved for the drop-down list. And so you could read through this. It walks you through how to do it. I've already given you an example of how it might look in my drop-down lists tab of the same document. So view, zoom, let's go to 200%. Is that too big? That's fine. So here's the same general idea, but you'll notice that when I click on Linda, I have a drop-down arrow. Only actual employees can go in here. They have to be on the list or they don't get in the file. My districts. I can only choose north, south, east, and west, or east, west, north, and south. That's my only choices. So if I tried to type in south, if I tried to type in SOTH and I forgot the U, it's gonna give me a warning, an error message. The value you entered is not valid. I can type in, instead of south, I could type north. I can manually type it in, or I can use the drop-down list to select my choices. So how did I do that? I've got another tab. You don't have to have another tab, but I do have another tab called lists. And here are my districts, east, west, north, and south. Here are my employees. And they're already defined. And basically what I do, and I'll make one right on this page right here, just so you see the process. I'm going to make a drop-down list that is blue, green, red, and yellow. And these are my colors. And then I can highlight my colors. I don't want to highlight the actual label, the title. It just is handy to have a title here. So I think it's good practice to give it a title, and then you know what you're going to call it. Because I'm going to now right-click and say define name. I'm naming that group, and I'm going to name that group colors. All right, so I just named, right-click, define name. And I called it colors. Now it's trying to give me a new name. I'm going to say cancel. But that's defining a name for a drop-down list. Now, since I have my drop-down list, here's my area. And just to make it easy, sometimes if I have drop-down lists that aren't obvious where the heck they go, I'll highlight them with a color so I know which cells have something special going on with them. So these are my, oops, actually, this is already set up. Let me set it over here. All of these are set up for employee name, and I forgot I did that. So here I'm going to make a new drop-down list of my colors. And right now, there's nothing there. I can just click on each cell. There's no handle or data entry element to add from a drop-down list. But I can go to my data tab, data ribbon, and there's something called data validation. Click on the down arrow, choose data validation, and one of my choices is a list. And you could look at all kinds of things on data validation. What is my source? I can put in the name if I wanted to, or I can just highlight source and then drag across the area there, and it says equals colors. I could have just typed in equals colors because I already knew that. All right, but this way, by defining the name, I have a name here. You don't have to define a name, it's just good practice. I could have just highlighted these cells without giving it a proper defined name, but it's good practice. Now I've got my colors list. Okay, and now, oops, when I'm in this cell, I can only add red, green, yellow, blue, etc. And if I type in the wrong thing, it's going to say, you can't do that. Well, what about blue lowercase? It will allow you, at least as far as I know, doing upper versus lowercase without any problem. Even, you know, B, L, U, E, it doesn't care about case. There might be situations where you can force case sensitivity. Not something I've done in Excel. In databases, I know you can do that. I'm not sure about Excel. That's not a huge issue, I would think, in most situations anyway. But data validation can be really handy. Let's say I don't want to do a list. I'm typing in numbers. I'm typing in the sales data for the sales group. And I don't want somebody to accidentally type in a number that makes no sense. They typed in, you know, $10,000. There's no way that anybody sells $1 million in a week. And so you have these limits. And I would do that on my research data. So for example, on my head size, I don't remember what my limit was, but you know, anything over 2.5 pounds or whatever, there's no way I'm gonna ever run across a head that big. So I would prevent it from entering. So at least I wouldn't get some really screwball accidental data entry that's way too big or way too small. It makes no sense. And you might not notice it at the time. And when you're there for an entire week typing in thousands of numbers, it's easy to have a really gross mistake that you might not catch. And data validation can help you at least catch those gross typos. Data validation can force you to have, let's say, only 5 numbers for a zip code. If you type in the word California, it won't allow you to type a word when it only will allow a 5-digit number. It won't allow you a 4-digit number, a 3-digit number. You can do data validation to force or constrain what is a valid, acceptable data entry for any given cell. And that's really, really handy. So you don't accidentally do states in the zip codes in the states, names where you're supposed to put prices, whatever. And it's a way to kind of lock things down a little bit to make it less likely to have errors. Now, a true database, you can really lock things down. Excel, a user with permissions can really screw things up real fast. You need to make sure people working in your Excel spreadsheets know what they're doing and are paying attention. But that's drop-down lists, and that's just one form, one example of data validation. And it's just good practice to have a tab called lists, and you keep your lists separate from your data forms. I didn't do it here in my example. You know, when I did it in front of you, I did it right here on the screen. So you don't have to do it on a separate sheet. It's just good form. All right. Drop down lists. And this walks you through, and I like the way they walk you through. You should be able to create your own drop down lists. Data validation in general. So again, drop-down lists is just one type of data validation. And so here they're talking about lists, but they're also showing additional types of data validation like I just described to you. So again, take a walk through this, read it, and play in Excel to look at some of the other things that you might do. I have a tab here called Data Validation. And cell B5 is limited to the varieties list on the right. So B5, there it is. It's limited to the varieties list. Now, oh, yeah, sharpshooter through Del Rey. And you'll notice that I have room to add more varieties. So right now, Del Rey's at the bottom, but if I did Target, there it is, Target shows up. So you can define your list bigger than, larger than the actual number of entries you have, and they'll just show up blank at the bottom. Blanks are an acceptable entry in this case. All right. And then you can change the list of varieties as you go. So that's a drop-down list. Cell or column B is limited to a decimal value between 20 and 200. So column B is 20 and 200. So I can add 20. I can add 200. Oops. But I can't add 19. It's going to give me a warning. That's outside of what I considered an acceptable range. I can't add 201. All right. So I've applied data validation. So a good example, I used to do a lot of what I would call ribbiness evaluation, where a 5 was beautiful. The head of lettuce was smooth. A 1, you turn the lettuce over, you look at the bottom of the lettuce, and the ribs are horrible. Just these big, gnarly looking petioles that are called ribs on heads of lettuce. So I would only accept values of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That was it. So I could do that from a drop-down list, but that's really slow, really slow for data entry to do drop-down lists. So I would just limit my data entry to any number between 1 and 5. Column C is limited to a decimal value between 150 and 600. 150.3. Oh, 166.45. Again, I said decimal values. How many decimals? I'm not sure how many if I defined them. 98, Yeah, I don't know that there's a limit other than, yeah, I didn't limit the number of decimals. Any decimals I can add. The way I define it, you could limit your decimals. You could definitely limit your decimals. And columns D and E are limited to a value between, oh, I did that, between 1 and 5. So again, 1, I can do 1.5 probably, yeah, because sometimes you go, is that a 1 or a 2? I'm going to call it 1.5. 1.01 probably is going to let me, yeah. I didn't limit it too much, but I can't do a 0.5. Nope. And I can't do a 5.1. It has to be in the range of 1 to 5. All right. So those are additional types of data validation. The next one, fill data automatically in worksheet cells. And even though it stops, it applies to Excel 2016, it actually goes beyond 2016. This is still accurate information. And you can read through this. It talks about how to do certain types of autocomplete functions, things like the fill handle. You can use Control D, Control R, etc. So again, you got to walk through this, play with it, have an Excel spreadsheet open, and play with some of the things in this. It's not that long. It says it's 9 pages, but it's mostly lists and some things that are really easy to deal with. So if I go back to my spreadsheet example, beware of autocomplete. If I wanted north in I-9, autocomplete might cause an error. So here's an I-9. Why would I want I-9? Maybe I meant B9. I is way the heck out here. But for example, if I type in north, as soon as I hit N, it says northeast. What if I type the word north and I hit enter thinking I typed the word north? That's one of the dangers of autocomplete. With some of the data that I do, I turn off autocomplete. With my research data, when I'm doing that, I turn it off in Excel. I don't want it to do that. I do not want it to give me something where I'm dealing with some experimental unit that I've designated as B127. And then I have, let me do it here, B127. And then I have another one, which is B12. Whoops. I think I typed B12 and I'm working hard and I'm going like crazy and I didn't notice. I just entered B127, but I also have a B12 experimental line. Turn it off. Autocomplete. Can be really handy, but in some situations, in my research, horrible. Microsoft does not use autocomplete on straight numbers. So if I type in 12, it's not going to try and do that. It used to, back in the old days, autocomplete's off for numbers. Yeah, this would be a real problem trying to do a list of these numbers with autocomplete. On the other hand, some types of data are perfect candidates for rapid entry with autocomplete. So I want to type in west, I just hit W, enter. Done. East, E, enter. Autocomplete knows what it thinks I want to do and quickly fills it in. But there are other things that you can do as well. Let's say I want 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. I could highlight these, grab the fill down button, or bar, handle rather, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5. Or I could do Mon, I think it works with the abbreviation, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Is it going to do it? No. It is only copying interesting. I don't know what the hell it did there. That's very interesting. Let me try. January, February. I can fill in the rest of the months very quickly. What if I typed out the whole Monday? And I'm thinking that's what the problem is. Since I did a shortened abbreviation that it didn't recognize. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So yeah, when I did my short list, I must have used an abbreviation that Excel didn't recognize as one of the shortened versions of the days of the week. But if I keep going, you know, let's say I have a list where I'm doing several weeks in a row, I just keep going and it'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it'll keep going. So it can be anything you can imagine, starting with 0.273. And it's going to go up in increments of 0.273 every time. It'll just keep adding 0.273, 0.273, 0.273. Is that handy? Maybe, maybe not. What if I started with 0.1, 0.273? That's a different starting point. It's not going up by 0.273. It's actually going up by 0.173. It's going up at a smaller rate because the distance from this first one to the second one is actually 0.173 because I started at 0.1, so I end up with a smaller number. If you use the fill handle like this to do any kind of filling, double check and make sure it's doing what you think it's doing. But it can be really, really handy and fast to use the fill handle on days, dates, times. You know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, let's do 5. So there's going to be 5-minute increments. And interesting, 5, 10, 15, 5, 10, 50. This one's just doing repeats. And again, interesting. That is not the way I was going to expect, because it's not doing 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's actually 12:05. If you look in the corner over here, it's interpreting it as a time on the clock as opposed to 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So again, formatting and how the cells are formatted, Excel's going to make a guess. And sometimes it guesses the way you're thinking, and sometimes it makes a guess that's not how you were thinking. All right? And so again, I'm glad I did that to show you that, you know, you might have something in your mind. I was expecting to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, all the way up to 55, and then 1 hour. But it didn't. I'm sure I could get it to do that if I formatted things right, but apparently things weren't formatted right. So let's take a break there. and I'll be right back.